Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk to you about smooth scrolling. Smooth scrolling is going to be where you click a button, it's in the same page. In fact, let's do this as an example where we scroll a little bit, we get our back to top button, and you click it, but instead of just jumping like that, it would ease with a scroll. Okay, that's going to be something that is done through JavaScript. So one of the easiest ways of doing this that I found that is so you don't have to write your own script, but it's really well written script, is if you go open a new tab, you can either do a search for this or you can go into Canvas, and I have a link directly to the page in css-tricks.com, or you can go to css-tricks.com. And then once you get to this page, you'll do a quick search for the words smooth scroll. So I'm going to type the word smooth scroll like this, and go ahead and click on the first hit. Okay, and the page should look something like this. And if you scroll down, right now we're going to ignore this first part. I want you to scroll down below, and you can read this entire article, by the way. It's a really great article. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at this script right here where it says smooth scroll with jQuery. And what it's going to do is it looks for, if you look here, remember I told you it starts with, with JavaScript it would start with a dollar symbol and then the target. Well, in the target, what it's looking for, and it's in single quotes, not double. Here, let me blow this up a little bit. Is it's looking for an an anchor tag, and then in square brackets, it's looking for specific pattern matching. It's saying basically any href that equals a pound, right? And then it says here the next thing is it's going to find anything that's just a pound, it's going to remove that. Anything that goes nowhere, basically remove that. And then after those two things are removed, as long as it basically has pound symbol and then a word after it, then we are going to do an event on click, and then it goes through all the script. I'm not going to describe the entire script, but essentially what this does is it looks for anchor links, and then later down here you'll see that it animates the scrolling. All right, and it uses that scroll top and it gives it an offset target and blah blah blah. And later, where this animation is, we are going to adjust it a little bit. You'll see later why. But right now we can just take this as is, and I'm going to copy starting with the comment all the way down. I'm going to hold down my shift key and click at the end with that last terminator, and I'm going to copy that into my clipboard. All right, and then what I need to do is jump into brackets, and I need to make a new script. All right, so let's come down here. And I want you to find, we're going to still put it inside of the document ready function so that it'll make sure that the document's fully loaded before it loads the smooth scrolling. And I want you to go after the terminator for the last function that we wrote, which was for the window scroll. I want you to hit the return key a few times, but make sure that you are still inside of the document ready function, right? So make sure it's before this last curly brace, parenthesis, close, and semicolon terminator. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new comment that says smooth scroll. And you could put, like courtesy of CSS tricks, and let's do that, courtesy of CSS tricks.com. Okay, and I'm going to come right here and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste that in. And it's really long, and so while my my cursor is at the very end of the script, I'm going to leave it there, scroll up, and then I'm going to hold the shift key down, and I'm going to go ahead and find the beginning of that script, which is where the that dollar symbol is, and I'm going to tab it in so that it fits in the right spot underneath my comment, so that it is clearly nested. Okay, so it's nice and clean. And I'm going to go ahead, you know what I'm going to do also, because we have so many functions within functions, right before the last closing of the document ready function, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in another comment like this that says end document ready function. Okay, and then that way we'll know that that's the end of the entire function for the document ready, and that way we don't get as we don't potentially get confused about which one of these things is the end of the last part of the function. All right, so now we've got this href, this link smooth scrolling thing. So we're going to hit save, and then we can come back to our web page, and let's see. What I'll do is I'll make this small screen. I'm going to hit refresh, and I'm going to scroll up, and then now my little back to top button appears, and I'll click it, and you see now it animates the scroll instead of jumping, right? And the other thing that you can do is right now, if you were to click any of these, it wouldn't work because they don't go anywhere, they don't link to anything. So let's go ahead and create some content to make this page nice and long, and we'll actually provide functional anchor links that these things will jump to, and we can test our smooth scroll. So let's do that. Let's go up here into the HTML, and let's see what we've got. And right now we've got this heading still that says creating a responsive menu. Let's change that heading, and let's instead say JavaScript /jQuery tutorial page or something like that, or experimental page. Okay, and we'll do that for the H1. And so we've got this content right here, but I think what I'd like to do is I would like to go ahead and down below all of this content, I think that I want to start making sections. All right, so inside of main, I think I'd like to give each one of these things section tags. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'll create section, right, like this. And then before I do anything else, I'm just going to go ahead and say ID equals, and then I'm just going to leave it blank. And I'm going to put some basic architecture into each one of these so that I can just copy and then paste and then fill stuff out. So right now what I'll do is I'll have this, let's do this as an H2, and then if you look at the names of these, we've got about us, products, mission, and so on. Let's say instead of about us, I'm going to say about jQuery or something like that. Okay. And then you can leave these. It really doesn't matter. Products, mission, sponsor, whatever. I don't care. This is just totally a tutorial page, but the point is going to be that it will have these things that it links to. And you could even, if you wanted to make this less confusing for you, if you find this confusing, you could just say, link 2, link 3, link 4, link 5, however you want to do it. And I'm going to give each one of these anchors something that I can link to. So we'll say that this is about. We'll say that this one is, let's say, products, something like that. Mission, and this one will be sponsors, and this one will be contact. And remember, you've got to leave that little hashtag there right in front of each one so that it knows to jump to an ID somewhere on the same page. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all this paragraph text. Just put that in my clipboard. Copy it like that. And then just below the H2 here, I'm going to come and paste it so that we've got a bunch of material that we can work with. Okay, and if I collapse that, I can go ahead and I can copy this really succinctly. I'll just copy it, and I think we have like 5 of these things, and I'll just paste until I have 5 there. Okay, and then what I need to do is go in here and look at the names. So we've got about, products, mission, sponsors, contact. So I'm going to make sure that the IDs are correct. About, you can copy and paste also so that you don't misspell anything. That's another thing that you can always do. Just make sure that you don't put the hashtag down here where it says ID equals products, ID equals about. That's not where the hashtag belongs. It just needs to be the name itself. All right. And then I think we had sponsors, and then the last one was contact. I'll just type contact. And then if you want to open each one of these up and then put, whatever, about us or something like that. Whatever. I honestly, I don't really care what it says. Just as long as you can tell that whenever you click on a link, that the H2 that's going to show up is going to be the appropriate one so that you can actually see that it's in the right place and that it's working. So we'll just make these things match. Sponsors, and let's do contact us. I think on mission, yeah, mission is supposed to be mission, not missions. Okay, we can save it and double check to make sure that the script that we just added down here is working. Okay, the smooth scrolling text script. So let's go ahead and save, and then let's jump back over to Chrome and let's do a refresh on the page, and let's test and see what happens. And it is in fact scrolling smoothly to each of these. Okay, now here's the trick. All right, is that if I scroll to, let's say, mission, I want you to notice right now in blue, what it does is it highlights the thing that's in focus. Just so you know, whenever you select something in the browser, it has a thing that's called focus. And right now, because we're using brackets, the brackets preview, that's how we can tell, as it says 127.0.0.1. We're using their little preview web browser, or I shouldn't say web browser, web service. It automatically highlights things that are currently in focus. So if I click on products, it'll put products in focus. If I click mission, it'll make mission in focus. So that's how I can tell what's in focus. And you'll notice that it scrolls, I would say it scrolls too far, but what it's doing is it's scrolling. Here, let me show you. If I were to inspect this real quick, let's inspect the nav. And instead of the background being sort of this black color, let's temporarily make it very, very pale so you can see through it. All right, so what's happening, just so you have a better understanding, oops, let's dock this at the bottom. There we go. Is if I click on sponsors, for instance, here, let's move this down. It is putting sponsors at the top of the page, right? But we can't see it because we have this fixed element sitting on top of everything. And remember, because the nav is fixed at the top, it's pulled out of the document flow, and so nothing else really pays any attention to where it is. And it's sort of like that thing that I described a long time ago. It's like kids standing in line for ice cream. If one kid gets pulled out of line to go fix its nose in the corner or something, like for timeout, then all the other kids are going to move up and take that kid's place. Well, that's kind of what's happening here, is that everything just moves up and it doesn't realize that that fixed element is there. So what we need to do is we need to go back into our code where it's got the smooth scroll, and we need to find where it's actually doing the animation. And if you look about, I would say about roughly halfway down inside of this this code, you can find the word animate right in here. On mine, it's about line 118. Yours might be a little bit different. And we need to change it so that where it says scroll top is going to be equivalent to the target offset of top, right? Means that's the top of the window. Then what we need to do, because here it's identifying it as HTML body, right? It's going to animate that whole thing. It's going to make it the offset be the top of it. We need to, excuse me, we need to subtract the amount, at least the amount of this fixed nav up here, so that it doesn't go all the way to the top, but it comes and it stops about here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say go to the top minus however much we want it to not go up, right? And so to do that, what we can kind of do is go back into our um, inspector, and we can remind ourselves real quick. Let's inspect this. Let's click on the nav where it's global nav, and we'll remind ourselves of how tall it is. And to do that, you can scroll down over here and you can see that it's about 90 pixels tall, roughly. Remember, if you look at this element while it's selected, it shows you what the current width by height is. And the height isn't something that constantly changes. If you remember, we had it set for pixels and ems using that calc function. So if we say, okay, well, it's at least 90 pixels tall, maybe we should give it like 100 for extra space so that it's not sitting right on the edge, then let's try that. Let's go here and we'll say right here after where it says scroll top, target dot offset, and it's got the parentheses dot top. What we're going to do is I'll put a space here minus and then 100. And remember, you don't need px or anything like that. You just leave it as a numerical value, and it knows that that's going to be in pixels based on what it's measuring. Okay, so we're going to save that. So make sure you go and save it. And we'll come back over here and we'll do a refresh. And let's move this down. And let's click on mission and see what happens. And it did work, but the problem is I have this open. Let's close the inspector and let's try that again. Let me hit refresh one more time. And let's start up here. I'll click sponsors. And it doesn't jump anymore. Okay, and so it stops in the right place because it's adding like an extra 100 pixels to clear this area at the top. And so I can click products, mission, I can go back up here, and it's working just fine. Okay, and so now we've got a good smooth scroll. Now here's one thing that you might have a sort of a problem with, is that if I click on this and when we're in the mobile view, and then I go to something like products, well, we have a problem because this thing stays open. So what we need to do to make sure that this isn't going to be a problem is that when we click on one of these links, one of the anchor tags that's inside of a list item, that's inside of this nav list, we need to make this whole thing close up again. All right, so let's take a look at the structure that we've got, and let's remind ourselves. So we've got this whole nav here, right? And if you remember, what we've done is we've got where it says menu. When we click on that button, we currently have it set so that it will close up the global nav. Basically, it will take the nav open class off that gets toggled, right? And so, like if I were to close that, then it would be okay. So we need to effectively make the same thing happen whenever we click any one of these anchor tags. All right, so that when we click an anchor tag inside of a list item that's inside of the UL, that's inside of global nav, that will also make that effective change, and it'll basically, to do that, it'll remove the nav open class. And let's, just as a reminder, let's go ahead and do this real quick. Let's go to sponsors, let's say, and I'm going to right click somewhere in here, and we'll inspect this so that you can see what I'm talking about. And let's put it off to the side. Oops, let's put it to the left. We'll open it up so that you can see what I'm talking about. And if you remember up here, let's see, let's open it even more. Okay. And what you'll remember here is that we've got on nav, that's the ID of global nav. Remember, it added that nav open class, and what we effectively need to do is we need to make sure that it goes in here and it removes this, all right, so that it gets rid of that. All right, and so that, see, that's what we want it to actually look like, so that it's all closed up. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we would need to do. Okay, so remember, anytime we click on any A tag inside of a list item that's inside of a UL that's inside of nav global, it's going to remove that class. So let's go down in our script down inside of this document ready function, and let's find the place that would make the right the most sense to put it. And I think that it would make sense to kind of group it with this other menu button toggle stuff. So here, let's just come right here, and I'll put a comment here that says remove nav open class when nav link is clicked, or something like that. Link is clicked. Okay. All right. And so we could really easily, we could actually just copy this up here, and we're going to change some stuff. Okay. I'm going to copy the menu button toggle rule, or the script. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it right here. All right. The thing we're targeting though is not, it is not this menu, right? What we're actually targeting, I want to copy where it says global nav. I want to copy that, and we're actually targeting any instance of a UL link or list item anchor. All right, so that we're looking for an anchor that is inside of a list item, inside of the UL, that's inside of the global nav. So when we click on any of those anchor tags inside a global nav that's specifically nested inside of a list, that's important. Then what we're going to do is we're going to, instead of toggle class, we are going to remove class. Okay, and it's going to remove the nav open class, okay, specifically. So let's save this. Let's do a quick check, and let's do a refresh. We're going to close this up, open this, and let's say we're going to go to sponsors, and it does in fact close up our menu for us. All right. Now, you might look at that though and say, well, wait a second, it still isn't showing. It's not showing it in the right spot. And in fact, it is not showing it in the right spot. But if you were to go and, let's say, look at this in Firefox, let's do a refresh on Firefox. If you opened it there, let's move this over, and we try it this way, you'll see that in fact it is in the right spot. So this is one of those tricky things that we're not going to really be able to fully resolve in this particular class, because whenever you start to get into cross browser platform stuff, it can be really tricky to get everything to look identical. But what we can do is I can go ahead and tell you that Mozilla is the rendering engine for Firefox, and WebKit is the rendering engine for Chrome. And so you can target Chrome, for instance, and you can tell Chrome that you want specifically to add padding above each thing that has focus. So let's take a look over here, and let's go into the CSS, and let's see what we can do. So I'm going to go down just above the media queries, because I want this to actually, this thing that I'm about to make a change for, I want it to actually affect the smallest screen, right? So I don't want to put it inside of a media query that only affects larger screens. So let's go ahead, and mine is going to be around line 113, right before the media queries. And I want to add a vendor, it's called a vendor specific type of rule. All right, so first of all, I want to target section only when it has focus. We've used the pseudo for hover, but I want to show you how you can use a section that has focus, or something that has focus. And so what that means is that whenever something has focus, it's currently selected. It's the currently selected element on the screen, or object on the screen. So whenever we are clicking this button, we are choosing focus. All right, and that's why you get this blue outline around it whenever we're doing using the brackets preview editor, right, or preview window. So if it has focus, I want to say that when it's, you want to do a dash and say WebKit when it's the WebKit rendering engine, and then dash again, and then we're going to say padding, and instead of padding top, we're going to say padding before. Okay, and this is something that is a specific WebKit option, and you can add padding before something. And that's what you'll often see if you were to go into the inspector and look at something where you haven't really styled anything, and you'll see that WebKit has added padding before something. All right, we're going to target the padding before, and let's give it, let's go ahead. I think what we set up here, let's find it in our script. I think it was 100 pixels. Yeah, 100 pixels. So let's type 100px, and we'll terminate that. And let's just see what that does. Let's save that and come back over here and hit refresh. And let's take a look now. Choose mission, and you see that it actually is working. And maybe I want to do a little less. Let's try like 90. Let's save that. Do a refresh in the browser window. Okay, and it looks like it's still jumping just a little bit. So maybe it's a little bit different. Let's try 80 and see if that still jumps. Save that and then hit refresh again. Let's try. And that doesn't seem to be jumping. And then if you wanted to go and test it in Firefox to make sure that it's not also affecting Firefox, we can hit refresh here, make sure that the page is refreshed, try something, and it seems like it's working just fine. And this is where it starts getting a little tricky. So if I were to go into Safari though, and look at it in Safari, and let's go ahead and try that in Safari, and now I click on it, you'll see that what it does is it goes up, and as soon as it gets focus, it would have been okay, but because Safari is also a WebKit rendering engine, it goes and it says, oh, well, this has focus, and it boom, it pops it down after it gets focus, and it adds that padding afterwards. And so it's a little bit awkward, but one of the things that I will say is that it's better that it shows it than having it start up here, which is kind of confusing. So this is one of those places where I would say in this class we're going to put a sort of a period at the end of this. You could go back and you could make more adjustments that are more complex. We're not really going to get into that though, but if you wanted to do something that has smooth scrolling with a fixed at the top, and if you run into these problems, then these are some of the solutions that you can experiment with. Okay, all right, so that's going to do it for the smooth scrolling. Go ahead and move to the next tutorial, and I'll show you how you can implement a lightbox gallery.